Welcome back to the deep dive. Um, Usually when we crack open a new stack of sources, we're looking at a specific event.
Mm,
A market crash, a political scandal, maybe a scientific breakthrough.
right.
But today, we're standing on the edge of a cliff,
Yeah.
or maybe more accurately, the bank of a river.
A very flooded river at that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We are looking at this massive pivot point in human history.
Yeah.
We're watching the moment a group of wandering former slaves suddenly have to become a nation state.
It really is. It's the ultimate startup to enterprise transition, if you want to use modern terms.
Right.
But the stakes aren't stock prices or market share, they're survival.
Yeah.
We are diving into the book of Joshua.
And I have to say, going through the research, the commentaries, and the text itself, this is not the Sunday school version I remember.
Not at all.
This is gritty, it's violent, it's
Yeah.
really complex, and frankly, it's tense.
It is incredibly tense, and it's often misunderstood. People read Joshua as just this blood and guts war chronicle. And don't get me wrong, there is war.
Plenty of it.
Yeah, plenty of it. But if you look at the source material, the King James text we're using, the rabbinical commentaries, the archaeological context, this isn't really a book about war. It's a book about possession.
Possession. That is the word that kept popping up in the notes.
Right. Because if you think of the first 5 books of the Bible, the Pentateuch as the preparation, Joshua is the execution. The Pentateuch is the promise. Joshua is the fulfillment.
It's where the rubber meets the road.
Exactly, or where the sandal meets the sand.
Good one. And to really understand the gravity of this, we have to set the scene for you listening. The context here is just crucial. The Israelites have been wandering in the wilderness for 40 years.
An entire generation.
Yeah, the one that came out of Egypt has died off. And now, the new generation is standing on the plains of Moab, looking across the Jordan River.
Mm.
But there is a massive void at the top of the org chart.
The missing giant.
Moses is dead.
You really can't overstate how terrifying that sentence must have been for them. The book literally opens with it. Now, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord.
Yeah.
Moses wasn't just a leader. He was the institution. He was the lawgiver, the miracle worker, the guy who literally glowed after talking to God.
Right, for 40 years, he was the safety net. If things went wrong, Moses fixed it. If they needed water...
Moses hits a rock.
Exactly. And now he's gone.
He's gone. And the baton passes to his assistant, Joshua. Talk about imposter syndrome.
Massive shoes to fill. And the mission isn't just to keep wandering. The mission changes completely.
Right.
They are moving from a defensive posture, surviving the desert, to an offensive posture. They have to conquer fortified cities with a civilian militia that's been eating manna for decades.
So that's the real question we're exploring today. How does that transformation happen? How do you turn a wandering tribe into a sovereign nation?
And the answer in the text is pretty surprising. It's not about better technology.
No.
It's not about chariot counts or developing iron weapons. The shift is theological.
Yeah.
It's about moving from the personality of Moses to the presence of God.
Which is a huge leap for them.
It is. So let's get right into it. Segment 1, the torch passes. We are in Joshua chapter 1.
So the book opens with God speaking directly to Joshua. And he doesn't offer condolences. He doesn't say, take a week to grieve. He basically says, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now, therefore, arise, go over this Jordan.
It's very abrupt. Arise, go.
Very.
But I noticed something interesting in the briefing materials regarding the boundaries. God outlines the land from the wilderness to the Euphrates.
Right. It's a reaffirmation of the Abrahamic covenant.
Mhm.
God is essentially saying the promise didn't die with the person. Moses is dead, but the covenant is alive.
Oh.
But then he gives Joshua the strategy. Now, if I'm a general and I'm about to invade a hostile country filled with walled cities and giants, I'm expecting a map.
Yeah, I want intel on the Hittites. I want to know where the Amorite strongholds are.
Exactly. But he doesn't get a map. He gets a book.
This book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth. Joshua 1:8. It's arguably the most counterintuitive military strategy in history.
It really is. God tells the new commander-in-chief that his primary job isn't strategy, it's scholarship.
But thou shalt meditate therein day and night. So the success of the military campaign is directly tied to the leader's literacy in the Torah.
It's tied to his obedience to it. The text uses a very specific phrase, that thou mayest prosper whithersoever thou goest. The Hebrew concept of prosper here isn't just, making money or winning battles. It implies acting wisely. It's covenant confidence.
I like that term in the notes, covenant confidence.
Yeah.
What does that actually look like in practice?
Well, it distinguishes biblical courage from regular bravery. Regular bravery is, I trust in my training, or I trust in my sword. Covenant confidence is, I trust in the written agreement I have with the Almighty.
Oh, that's good.
God says, as I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. The variable for victory isn't the strength of the army, it's the presence of God. If God is present, victory is inevitable. If God is absent, defeat is certain.
Which explains why God tells him 3 separate times, be strong and of a good courage. Joshua was probably shaking in his boots.
Without a doubt, he knew what he was up against. I mean, he had seen the giants 40 years prior as a spy. He knew the odds better than anyone.
So, Joshua takes the reins. He issues his first orders. Prepare you victuals, for within 3 days he shall pass over this Jordan. But then he has a very specific logistical and really a political problem to solve.
Ah, yes.
The tribes of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh.
The Transjordan tribes. These guys are so interesting. Under Moses, they had already requested and received land on the east side of the Jordan River, pasture land.
So technically they're already home.
Exactly. They have zero pragmatic reason to cross the river and fight for land they aren't even going to live in.
It's the classic I got mine scenario. They could have just waved goodbye from the East Bank and said, good luck, guys.
They really could have. But Joshua challenges them. He reminds them of the principle of unity. He basically says, you don't get to retire while your brothers are at war.
Ye shall pass before your brethren armed, until the Lord have given your brethren rest.
It establishes a key political theory for Israel. The nation is a single organism. You cannot have localized peace if the corporate body is at war. And to their credit, these tribes step up.
They really do.
They say, all that thou commandest us, we will do. They completely validate Joshua's leadership.
That is a powerful definition of community. I'm not okay until you're okay.
Precisely. It unifies the army. So now, the force is ready. But before they actually cross the river, Joshua needs intel. Which brings us to segment 2. Spies, lies, and a scarlet thread.
Joshua chapter 2. This feels like a major callback to 40 years ago when Moses sent 12 spies, and it went terribly wrong.
It does, but notice how Joshua handles it differently. He only sends 2 spies. Smaller team, less chance of a committee meeting gone wrong.
Right.
And he sends them directly to Jericho. Now remember, Jericho is the lock on the door of Canaan. It's a fortress city.
And this is where the story gets incredibly cinematic. They enter the city and they end up in the house of Rahab. And the text is very explicit about her profession. She is a harlot.
She is.
Yeah.
And historically, this has made some commentators pretty uncomfortable, but it's absolutely crucial to the narrative arc. You have to appreciate the irony here.
Oh, the irony is thick.
You have the king of Jericho, the guy with the army, the walls, the power, and he is panicking. He's frantically hunting these spies. And then you have Rahab, marginalized, living on the actual city wall, selling her body. And she is the one who holds all the power.
She hides them under stalks of flax on her roof.
Which, by the way, tells us it's harvest time. Flax is drying. That detail matters later for the river crossing. But look at the conversation she has with the spies. This is the real deep dive nugget for this section. Rahab is a better theologian than most of the Israelites.
She gives this incredible speech. She says, I know that the Lord hath given you the land. And then she literally starts reciting their own history back to them.
Right.
She knows about the drying up of the Red Sea. She knows about the defeat of the Amorite kings, Sihon and Og.
It's fascinating. The information had traveled. In a world completely without internet or telegraphs, the reputation of Yahweh had traveled ahead of the army. She says, your terror is fallen upon us. The Hebrew implies they are melting with fear.
Wow.
While the Israelites are outside wondering, can we even take this city? The people inside are already psychologically defeated.
But Rahab isn't just scared. She's proactive. She cuts a deal.
A suzerain vassal treaty in miniature. She swears allegiance to Yahweh in exchange for protection. Our life for yours. And the sign of this covenant is the scarlet thread.
The red cord hanging in the window. It's such a vivid visual image against those stone walls.
It's deeply symbolic. You really can't miss the Passover parallel here. Just as the blood on the doorpost in Egypt caused the destroyer to pass over, the red cord in the window marks her house for salvation.
Yeah.
But the bigger insight here is about who gets included in God's people.
Right. She's a Canaanite. She's a prostitute. She's everything the law says to avoid.
And yet, because of her faith, she is grafted in. It shows that even in this book of conquest and holy war, God's mercy is leaking out to anyone who actually asks for it. Rahab ends up in the lineage of David and Jesus. It's a massive plot twist right at the beginning of the book.
So the spies escape, thanks to Rahab, and they report back to Joshua. Truly, the Lord has delivered the land into our hands. Morale is sky high. Now we get to the physical barrier. Segment 3, crossing the Jordan.
This is the miracle of entry. And again, the text gives us details that make the situation much worse before it gets better. Remember the flax.
The flax drying on the roof, so it's harvest time.
Exactly. Which means the Jordan isn't just a quiet stream, it's at flood stage.
Right.
In the dry season, the Jordan can be pretty underwhelming. But in the spring, with all the snow melt coming down from Mount Hermon, it's a raging, muddy torrent. It's dangerous. Crossing an army with women, children, and livestock is logistically impossible.
But Joshua's orders to the people are strange. It's a procession, not a rush. The Ark of the Covenant goes first.
And not just first. There has to be a gap. 2,000 cubits? That's about half a mile between the Ark and the people.
Why the massive gap? Why not have the Ark right there with the troops for a morale boost?
Well, the text says that ye may know the way by which you must go, for ye have not passed this way heretofore.
Okay.
But theologically, it's about leadership. If the soldiers go first, they're conquering. If the Ark goes first, God is conquering.
Oh, wow.
The Ark represents the localized presence of Yahweh, his throne. By sending the Ark half a mile ahead, Joshua is essentially saying, we are just the cleanup crew. God is the tip of the spear.
And the miracle happens the moment the priest's feet touch the water.
The soles of the feet. It requires that first step of active commitment. And the waters stop. Now, the text is very specific here. It says the water stood and rose up upon an heap very far away at a city called Adam.
So the riverbed dries up, and they cross on dry ground. It's the Red Sea 2.0.
Deliberately so. The text says this was done, that all the people of the earth might know the hand of the Lord. It validates Joshua completely. It proves that the God of Moses is now the God of Joshua. Just as God parted the water for Moses, he parts it for Joshua. The torch has truly passed.
But they don't just cross and immediately run toward Jericho. They stop to do some landscaping. You get this really interesting detail in chapter 4 about the stones, the memorial stones.
Yes, 12 stones taken from the riverbed, right where the priest's feet stood, and 12 stones set up in the river.
It seems a bit redundant to modern ears, but it's absolutely crucial for an oral culture.
The purpose is explicitly stated in the text. When your children ask their fathers in time to come, saying, what mean ye by these stones?
It's the purpose of memory. The stones serve as a permanent testimony. They transform a geographical location into a theological lesson.
You anchor the theology in geography.
Exactly. You walk past the pile of rocks, your kid asks, hey, Dad, why is there a massive pile of river rocks in the middle of this field? And you don't say, because I like landscaping.
You tell the story. We crossed on dry land. It anchors the miracle in history so the next generation doesn't forget.
So they are finally across. They are in enemy territory. Jericho is literally just down the road. You'd think, all right, sharpen the swords, check the armor, let's go. But segment 4 is called Consecration Before Conflict. They hit the pause button.
They camp at Gilgal. And instead of military drills, they engage in 2 profound spiritual acts. First, circumcision.
Yeah, the text explains that the generation born in the wilderness hadn't been circumcised.
Right. The generation that came out of Egypt died in the wilderness. Their children, living in this sort of state of suspension during the wandering, hadn't received the sign of the covenant. So right there, on the plains of Jericho, totally vulnerable to their enemies, they perform a mass circumcision.
Which, from a military standpoint, is utter insanity. You are incapacitating your entire fighting force for days, right under the nose of the enemy.
It is tactically suicidal, but strategically, it's essential. It's an act of rolling away the reproach of Egypt. It's restoring their identity as God's distinct people. You can't fight God's battles if you aren't marked as God's people.
Wow.
It's an act of total vulnerability. They are trusting God to protect them while they heal.
And then they celebrate the Passover. Again, looking back to the deliverance from Egypt. And then a massive shift occurs in the daily life of the nation. Joshua 5.12 says, and the manna ceased on the morrow after they had eaten of the old corn of the land.
No more magic bread.
The era of supernatural sustainment in the wilderness is over. Now begins the era of natural provision from the inheritance. They are finally eating the fruit of the land they were promised. It's a signal that the wandering is truly, finally done.
And then we get one of my absolute favorite scenes in the entire book. Joshua is by Jericho, looking at the city, probably stressing about how to breach those massive walls. And he sees a man standing with a drawn sword. Joshua walks up to him, which, by the way, shows Joshua's pretty brave.
Yeah, he doesn't run away.
Right. He walks right up and asks the question any general would ask, art thou for us or for our adversaries?
It's the classic binary framework of war, friend or foe. But the answer he gets completely shatters that framework. The man replies, "Nay."
No, just no.
"Nay, but as captain of the host of the Lord am I now come."
That is a spine-tingling moment. Most commentators view this as a Christophany, a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ. But regardless, it's a theophany, an appearance of God. And the message is shattering. He's essentially saying, Joshua, you're asking the wrong question. I didn't come to take sides. I came to take over.
So the question isn't whether God is on Joshua's side. The question is whether Joshua is on God's side.
And Joshua's response is immediate submission. He falls on his face, and the captain says, Loose thy shoe from off thy foot, for the place whereon thou standest is holy.
Echoing Moses at the burning bush.
Exactly. It reminds Joshua that this war is not just some territorial land grab. It is a holy act. The ground is holy because God is present. Before the conquest can begin, there must be consecration. Before strategy, there must be surrender.
So now, fully surrendered, Joshua gets the battle plan for Jericho. And that brings us to segment 5, the fall of Jericho. If the captain encounter was surprising, this battle plan is downright baffling.
It defies all military logic. There are no siege ramps, no battering rams, just a parade. The command is to march around the city once a day for 6 days. 7 priests, 7 trumpets of ram's horns, and the ark. And the army.
And here is the kicker. Absolute silence. Neither shall any word proceed out of your mouth. Can you imagine? An entire army, thousands of men, marching in complete silence. Just the sound of boots and the trumpets.
The psychological impact on the inhabitants of Jericho must have been terrifying. No taunts, no war cries, just this relentless, silent procession circling their walls. If you're inside Jericho looking down and these people are just circling you silently day after day, it's unnerving. It demonstrates incredible discipline on the part of Israel. It's a strategy of waiting and obedience.
And then comes the 7th day.
They march 7 times. The priest blow the long blast. Joshua commands, Shout, for the Lord hath given you the city. And the walls fall down flat.
It's chaos. The army ascends, every man straight before him. They take the city. But then we have to talk about the ban. The text says the city is accursed or devoted to the Lord.
This is a really difficult concept for modern listeners, but it's crucial to understanding the text. The Hebrew word is harem. It means something is irrevocably given over to God, often for destruction. Jericho was the first fruits of the conquest. Just as the first fruits of a harvest belonged to God, the first city belonged entirely to him.
So they weren't allowed to loot it.
Exactly. All silver, gold, brass, and iron went into the treasury of the Lord. The people and animals were destroyed. Now, the text portrays this as a judgment on the Canaanite culture, which the Bible describes as deeply corrupt. But it was also a test of Israel's obedience. Could they conquer a wealthy city and take absolutely nothing for themselves?
Well, almost everyone was destroyed. We do have to mention Rahab.
Yes, amidst all the destruction, the promise is kept. The spies go in, bring out Rahab and her entire family, and they are saved. It's a beautiful picture of mercy in the midst of judgment. She is spared because of her faith and the covenant she made with the spies.
So Jericho is a total victory. High fives all around. But then we hit segment 6, defeat, deception, and discovery. Joshua sends a small reconnaissance team to take the next town, Ai. It's a small place. They figure, we don't need the whole army. Just send 3,000 guys.
And it is an absolute disaster. They are routed. 36 men die. They run for their lives. And the text says the hearts of the people melted and became as water. The confidence from Jericho evaporates instantly.
Joshua is devastated. He's tearing his clothes, face in the dirt, asking God, why did you bring us here to die?
And God's response is blunt. Israel hath sinned.
Notice he says Israel, not a guy named Achan.
That's the concept of corporate responsibility. The nation is viewed as a covenantal whole. Because one man violated the harem, the ban, the whole nation lost God's presence. And remember what we established earlier. Without God's presence, they are just a group of former slaves with bad weapons. They have no natural advantage.
So they have to find the culprit. They do this rigorous process of elimination by lot. Tribe of Judah, then Zarites, then Zabdi, and finally Achan.
And Achan confesses. It's a tragic confession. I saw, I coveted, I took. He saw a beautiful Babylonish garment, 200 shekels of silver, and a wedge of gold. He buried them in his tent.
Hidden sin.
Hidden sin is never private. That's the theological point the text is making. Achan thought he was doing something in secret, but it cost 36 men their lives and paralyzed the entire nation.
The consequences are severe. Achan and his family are stoned and burned in the valley of Acre, which literally means trouble.
It's a grim scene, but the message is clear. You cannot have the land without the law. You cannot have the victory without the obedience. God will not fight for a compromised people. Once the sin is dealt with, however, God says, "Fear not," and they go back and take Ai, this time using an ambush strategy, which God actually allows.
So they're back on track. But then they get hustled. Segment 7. The Gibeonite Deception. This is almost a comic relief moment if the stakes weren't so high.
It is a very clever ruse. The Gibeonites are Hivites, locals, but they know they can't win a direct fight, so they dress up as if they've been on a 6-month journey.
The text lists the props. Old sacks, rent wine bottles, old shoes, moldy bread. They show up at Gilgal and say, "We're from a far country, make a treaty with us."
And the Israelites inspect the bread, they look at the shoes, they rely entirely on their senses. But the text gives the fatal diagnosis in Joshua 9.1 verse. The men took of their victuals and asked not counsel at the mouth of the Lord.
Didn't even pray about it.
They trusted their eyes instead of asking God. And so they sign a peace treaty. 3 days later, they find out these guys live right next door.
Whoops.
Huge whoops. The people are furious. They want to wipe them out. But the leaders say, "We can't."
Because they swore an oath by the Lord God of Israel.
This is a fascinating insight into the biblical view of words. Even though the treaty was obtained by fraud, the oath was made in God's name. God's reputation is now permanently tied to the safety of these deceivers. If Israel kills them, they profane God's name.
So the Gibeonites are spared, but they become hewers of wood and drawers of water. They become servants for the tabernacle.
Integrity matters. Even when you've been deceived, you keep your word. But it also sets up the next major conflict. Because Gibeon has defected to Israel, the other local kings are furious.
Which leads us directly to segment 8, the day the sun stood still. 5 Amorite kings form a coalition to attack Gibeon. Gibeon calls Joshua for help. "Hey, we're your servants now. Come save us."
And Joshua honors the treaty. He marches all night from Gilgal to rescue them. And this launches the southern campaign.
And this battle in Joshua 10 is just wild. God fights with heavy artillery.
Literally, the text says God cast down great stones from heaven, hailstones. And it explicitly notes that more enemies died from the hail than from the swords of the Israelites.
And then, the moment everyone remembers, Joshua needs more time to finish the battle. So he speaks to the Lord and to the sun and moon. "Sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajalon."
And the source text says, "The sun stood still and the moon stayed." So the sun hasted not to go down about a whole day.
Now, people have debated the physics of this for centuries. Was it an eclipse? Was it atmospheric refraction? But the text commentary is what's really important here.
Right. The commentary in verse 14 says, "There was no day like that before it or after it, that the Lord hearkened unto the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel." The point isn't just an astronomical anomaly, it's theological sovereignty. The God of Israel controls the very cosmos to keep his covenant. It's also a direct swipe at the Canaanite gods. The sun and moon were deities to them. Joshua treats them like desk lamps that he can just pause.
The 5 kings are found hiding in a cave. Joshua traps them there, finishes the battle, and then executes them. He has his captains put their feet on the necks of the kings.
A symbol of total dominion. Thus shall the Lord do to all your enemies. It's a graphic demonstration that the power of the Canaanite city-states is completely broken.
This wraps up the southern campaign. Then we zoom out for segment 9, conquest and division. We head north.
Joshua 11 describes the northern campaign. Jabin, king of Hazor, built a massive coalition. The text says they were as the sand that is upon the seashore in multitude, with horses and chariots.
This is the high-tech army versus the infantry. But God gives a really strange command. Key their horses and burn their chariots.
To hoe means to hamstring. It disables the horse. God is telling Joshua, do not adopt their technology. Do not build a chariot corps. Rely on me. If Israel had kept the chariots, they would have started trusting in chariots.
So they win the north. The summary is that Joshua took the whole land, defeated 31 kings, and the land rested from war. But there is still land to be occupied. And this brings us to one of the best character moments in the book, Caleb.
Joshua 14. Caleb was the other faithful spy alongside Joshua back in Moses' day. He is now 85 years old.
But he doesn't want a retirement home. He walks right up to Joshua and says, "I am as strong this day as I was in the day that Moses sent me." And he asks for a specific inheritance. Hebron.
He says, "Give me this mountain." And he explicitly notes that the Anakims, the giants, are there. At 85, Caleb isn't asking for the easy valley. He's asking for the toughest fight because he has total faith in the promise. The text says he wholly followed the Lord God of Israel.
Whatever Caleb was eating, I want some.
It was faith. It was 45 years of holding on to a promise.
So the land is divided by lot. Every tribe gets their territory. But there's one tribe that gets nothing. The Levites.
Well, they get cities to live in, but they get no territorial boundaries. The text says, the priesthood of the Lord is their inheritance.
Which sounds very spiritual, but also no farm.
It meant they were totally dependent on the tithes of the other tribes and on God directly. They were scattered throughout the nation to teach the law. Their possession was access to God, not ownership of land.
We are coming to the end of the journey. Segment 10. The departure. Joshua is old. He knows he's dying. He gathers the leaders for a farewell address.
And the tone is incredibly somber. He warns them. He says, essentially, God has done everything he promised. Not one thing has failed. But then comes the warning. If you turn back and mix with the remnants of these nations, if you adopt their gods, they will be snares and traps unto you, and scourges in your sides and thorns in your eyes.
He calls them to Shechem for a covenant renewal. He recounts their history from Abraham to the conquest. And then he issues the ultimatum that is probably the most famous verse in the book.
Choose you this day whom you will serve.
But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord.
The people immediately respond, oh, we will serve the Lord too. Far be it from us to forsake him. But Joshua pushes back. This is fascinating. He actually argues with them. He says, ye cannot serve the Lord, for he is an holy God. He is a jealous God.
He's trying to talk them out of it.
He's trying to make them count the cost. He's saying, this isn't a light social club membership. This is a covenant with a holy God who doesn't tolerate rivals. He wants their yes to be grounded in the reality of God's holiness.
They insist, nay, but we will serve the Lord. So Joshua sets up a stone of witness under an oak tree.
Another stone.
Another stone. Behold, this stone shall be a witness unto us, for it have heard all the words of the Lord.
It's a deeply poetic ending. The stone stands silent witness to the promise the people just made.
And then the outro. The end of an era. Joshua dies at 110. Eleazar the priest dies. And finally, the bones of Joseph, which they've been carrying around in a box since Exodus, are buried in Shechem.
It's a profound moment of closure. Joseph's dying wish in Genesis was, God will surely visit you, and ye shall carry up my bones from hence. That burial signifies that the promise to the patriarchs is finally fulfilled. They are home.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what does this all mean for you listening? We've seen walls fall, suns stand still, and rivers stop flowing.
If we synthesize all this source material, the book of Joshua is a testimony that the conquest was not achieved by human strength. It wasn't the silent marching or the shouting or the hailstones. It was the presence of God.
The promise kept.
Exactly. But it leaves us with a lingering tension. The generation of Joshua served the Lord. They saw the miracles firsthand. But the book ends with that single stone under the oak tree.
And stones don't speak unless someone tells their story.
That is the provocative thought for us. Memory is fragile. The generation that conquers usually remembers. But what about the generation that just inherits? Will the memory of the stones hold for them? Or will they forget what the Jordan crossing meant?
That is a heavy question to end on. Will we remember the stones?
It's the question every generation has to answer.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.
A pleasure.
We'll see you next time.